Welcome everyone who has just joined us. We are just waiting for HackPrinceton organizers to set up their end for the classroom presentation. And once they are ready, we will start. So just hang tight for a couple minutes, work on your side projects or do some ideation as we get ready for our Introduction to Design Thinking workshop. Welcome. And I guess also in the meantime, if you're interested, please feel free to check out our Instagram. Our handle is @girlsinsteam.org. I will type it in the chat.
Perfect. We also have it set up in A17, so it's right now on the big screen as well. So for anyone who wants to come to the classroom to listen as well, that's another option.
Yeah, so we do have some activities in our presentation as well. So if you have a team or some friends that you want to hang out with, we highly recommend going to the classroom and doing activity in person because it's probably a little bit easier to maneuver. But if you want to stay here, that's totally fine. We'll just put all of the online people in a breakout room. And it's totally optional. You don't have to participate if you don't want to, but you're free to if you would like to.
Okay, you guys are on the big screen on our side, so you can get started whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Justice. All right, Coco, you can take it away.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you everyone who's joining us, whether you're attending HackPrinceton in person or if you are attending virtually. We are Girls in STEAM. We are a nonprofit organization based in Vancouver, Canada, which is one of the reasons why we are not able to be at HackPrinceton in person. So many of our members, we are based here in Vancouver, as well as across North America in different colleges and high schools. Today, we are very happy to be presenting on a presentation, an introduction to design thinking. So before we start, I'd like to kind of present a little background about our presenters today. So myself, my name is Coco, and I am the VP of Programming at GIS. I also have me today with our team, Ariel, who is the president of GIS, as well as Kristy, who is the VP of Design. And today we will be each presenting a different section of our presentation, and we will be leading some activities as well. I'll now pass it off to Ariel, and she will discuss a little bit about what STEAM education is like, as well as give a little introduction about GIS.
Yeah, so thank you, Coco, and welcome everyone to our today's presentation and session on Intro to Design Thinking. So you may wonder, what is STEAM education? STEAM is relatively a new term. It came from STEM, and STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art and design, and math. So simply, STEAM education is a multidisciplinary approach to teaching. STEAM is designed to encourage discussions and problem solving among students, developing both practical skills and appreciation for collaborations. As for us, why STEAM? Art and design are inseparable in today's STEM education. In order to build a diverse and technologically advanced community, representation really matters amongst leaders and creators. And at Girls in STEAM, our mission is centered around community, education, and access. And our events happen on a monthly basis, involving workshops that teach STEAM tools, panels to connect women and gender diverse friends, and volunteer opportunities to connect with other local organizations focused on gender-based issues. More women in STEAM statistics. We all know that women and minorities are underrepresented in STEM fields. To put that into context, in the United States, despite women making up nearly half of the workforce, only 27% of the STEM workers are women by 2019. We have made gains, as in 1970, only 8% of the STEM workers are women, and this is according to the US Census Bureau. And in Canada, there are even less women in STEM, and according to Statistics Canada, out of all the Canadians with a STEM degree, only 34% are women, and they make up less than 25% of Canadians working in science and technology, according to Statistics Canada. Some LGBTQ+ in STEAM statistics, compared to their non-LGBTQ+ peers, LGBTQ+ professionals were 20% more likely to have experienced professional devaluation, which is when their STEM expertise has been devalued or discounted. And when it comes to mental health, LGBTQ+ persons were 27% more likely to have experienced minor health problems and 30% more likely to have experienced one or more depressive symptoms in the past year. And a third of LGBTQ+ STEM professionals experienced one or more types of social exclusion. A little bit more about our team at Girls in STEAM. Our wonderful team is based across North America, and we will be hiring campus ambassadors in all high school and college campuses for the next calendar year in June. So we welcome you all to apply if you're interested in getting involved. And of course, keep an eye out on our social media, especially our Instagram at girlsinsteam.org if you want to stay connected and hear more updates. So our team is all over the place. So we have, although we are home-based in Canada, there are some of our VP are based in Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, and of course, Vancouver. More fun things on Instagram. Like I said, we share new tech terms on a weekly basis, latest developments in STEAM fields, women's STEAM profiles, podcasts, books, resources, and GIS events and opportunities. And I'm going to pass it back to Coco.
Great, thank you, Ariel. So today I'll briefly give a little introduction of our workshop. So some of the goals that we established for this workshop, we would like to help you understand what design-based thinking is, kind of learn about the basic principles, and then we will kind of go into talking about recognizing the different design principles and how they have impacted your daily life, whether you're using a website, an app, or other software. And then lastly, we'll also identify accessibility kind of issue and how it is a big key component of a successful design thinking process. So for today, we will be starting off with the introductory activity, and in this activity, we will then move on to learning about the design thinking process itself. We will talk a little bit about different elements of accessibility in design, and then we will have a little bit of a discussion on potential career opportunities in the field. And then lastly, we'll have a design thinking in practice, which is another kind of group exercise. So for the first introductory activity, we would like to invite you to think about how you use design in your daily life. So whether you're attending virtually or attending in person, maybe we'll give maybe 2 to 3 minutes for everyone to kind of think about a previous experience, whether you use the website, an app, or software, and then how, what elements did you like about it, what elements did you not like about it, and then if you were able to make changes, what are things that you like to change about the website so that you can improve it for the user experience.
Alrighty, welcome back. And I guess we were curious if anyone has some examples that they want to share. And feel free to put up your hand, or for our in-person attendees, if HackPrinceton organizers can help us facilitate. Any examples? Nisha?
Yeah, so I talked about going through CodeMonkey today, and then I wanted to just go through it without actually making an account. And that option was there, but like in the end, I was required to make an account, while I was promised like I could interact with it without making an account. So I thought that was frustrating and misleading for a person who just like wants to interact with the website just like once. So yeah.
Yeah, that can definitely be frustrating. I feel like a lot of the times when people or when websites try and sell softwares and you don't actually know what it looks like, but then you have to make an account and they like in order to use it, you have to pay before you actually try it out, which doesn't make any sense. So how can people be able to try out the software first before actually knowing how it works? Thank you so much for sharing. Any other examples? I'm also curious if GIS team has examples.
Yeah, I can start. I think one example is I know that a lot of us in GIS we all like K-pop. So there was an application I used to use called KMS, and it was basically like a platform where you can buy albums. And I think a lot of us, we were all struggling with the application because when we had issues with the order, it was hard to connect with the, I guess, the point of person who was responsible for sales. I think the application itself, even though it was like very simple in design, I think from the UX perspective, we felt that a lot of the layouts or the way that a lot of the buttons were set up, it was like hard to use and it was like hard to navigate, even though it didn't seem like it was cluttered with a lot of different like features or kind of buttons.
And if you were to improve it, what would be like one small thing that you could do to make it a little bit better?
I think one thing that definitely will be having someone reliable being the customer support person. But I think just having a simplistic kind of layout in terms of organizing the structure. So, having a simple page for the home page, and then when you click into a separate section for placing your order, or maybe when you are trying to browse different albums, just having things set up in a way that it's like easier to navigate. So I think it's probably from the back end in terms of how they organize the application.
Nice. All right, I think we can move on. Thank you all for your examples.
Yeah, and so now I'm going to just talk a little bit about the design thinking process. I personally first heard of this during my UX design bootcamp, but it really does exist everywhere, not just in UX design or specific like careers that use design thinking, especially because, life is by design. Everything we do has a reason for it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is in terms of like UX designer, that kind of stuff. So by definition, like design thinking is a creative approach to problem solving that can be applied to almost any field. It involves understanding the user's needs, brainstorming, prototyping, testing, and the process is also very iterative. And so you can actually just go back and forth between different steps. If you want to redo some steps, jump back and forth. It's a really like free-flowing process that can be used to explore as many solutions as possible. And so this allows for refinements and improvements at every single stage of the way. And now we're going to further break it down even more into the 5 steps that we usually use as, like for me as a UX designer, these are the 5 steps that we usually use. First is to empathize with the users and whatever target audience you're trying to research for. Through the stage, you get a really good, deeper understanding of what the actual issue is. A lot of times the complaints you hear and all that stuff, it might not be the actual key issue that you want to fix. So this step is just really great just to understand what the bigger and more detailed definition is of what you're trying to explore. And number 2 would be to define. So after you've empathized and you've talked to the users, this is when you can analyze the research, the data that you came back with, and to identify the key problem areas, and you can define the problem that you want to solve. And number 3 would be to start the ideation phase of this design thinking process. This is where you want to meet up with different people, work together in teams, work together or by yourself, just to brainstorm a lot of ideas. And the biggest thing that I learned during UX design is that this isn't the phase to like narrow down on your idea. It's really the phase where you want to open up the funnel to as many ideas as possible, to do the most creative and like crazy ideas and try to explore them, so that when you have to narrow it down, you've already explored all the different like crazy ideas that no one's think of before. And number 4 would be to prototype. This is where you can actually start to build out a simple version of your solution. Sometimes you might have different prototypes just to test it out. But this is, where you can really start to see your ideas come into physical products or like virtual digital products. And this is a phase that leads into the next one, which is then testing. This is when you have a prototype already set out. You can get a group of like user testers, or like get your friends or families to test out the solution for you. And personally, this is one of my favorite stages as well, because you can actually see how your product and how your idea is getting used by another person, and just like you can see how they think, like what they think the next step is, what they're going to click. It's a really fun experience to do alongside the users. And then through testing, this is also where you know like what you need to go back and fix, if there's anything that's still confusing, if you even solved your problem. A lot of times we create like solutions that don't actually solve the initial issue we like pointed out. So this is a great way to just go back and forth and revisit the different steps to make sure your solution actually works towards the key issue you're trying to fix. And so next, just I guess within just with yourself, maybe we can do a little bit of like reflection of how we have used this design-based thinking in our, in our everyday lives, testing out our ideas or in solutions and tweaking them until everything gets like fixed or is a little bit better. Just with yourself, think about if you've done this in the past and like why it worked out so well or why it didn't work out so well. And like for example, for me, I know when I was in university, a lot of my like studying, it was actually like design thinking, like, oh, when am I gonna do this? How am I going to study? What's the strategy? Oh, if I have like different time commitments coming up, like that's an issue. So how am I going to solve that? That was all design thinking for me. But yeah, and then now I think I'll pass it back to Coco to talk about the next topic.
Perfect, thank you. So now I'll discuss a little bit about accessibility as well as inclusion in the design thinking process. So when it comes to design thinking, we want to make sure that we are being accessible and inclusive of our users. And this could be kind of shown in various different types of means. So for example, whether it's accessing or interacting with our users, we want to make sure that there's different multiple ways of doing so. And this could be, through different platforms or different modes of communication. We want to ensure that the process itself is easy to understand and navigate, with very clear instructions. We also want to consider the needs and preferences of different users. And I can go a little bit more into that in the next slide, where we talk about, things like when we have users from different backgrounds, non-native speakers, individuals with disabilities. These are all kind of different components we want to think about when in the design thinking process. We want to provide opportunities for user feedback. So just like Kristy mentioned, it's really important to get really valuable feedback from our users, so that way when we are improving or working on our prototypes, we can make sure that we are kind of keeping their needs in mind. And then lastly, we want to test the process with diverse groups of users, just so that we get a wide range of feedback. So some accessibility requirements for visual design, we can break it down into two different categories, so user interface as well as user experience. With the user interface section, there's a lot of different features. So for example, whether there's a contrast in color between the text and the background. So for example, the slide that you're currently seeing, we have a light background, and then we have chosen a darker color for the font, so that whether you are viewing it on a screen or you're viewing it, maybe shown on a PowerPoint, then it's like accessible and easier to view. We want to make sure that we're avoiding the use of colors as a sole means of conveying information. We want to make sure that we choose fonts that are easy and simple to read on different screens. So whether you're viewing it on your personal device or projected somewhere, that easier to read font is really important. And then also to alternate the text description for both images, so like the caption as well as the visual content. And from the user experience perspective, I think captions and transcripts for videos and audio is really important, as well as making sure that a lot of the designs are scalable and can be easily adjusted depending on the mode of communication. So if you're using it on your phone versus on a tablet versus on a computer, the design or the image could show up differently. Also having keyboard navigation options as well as clear and consistent navigation and layout are also important as well. Key principles in design thinking. So now that we kind of looked at the process of design-based thinking, we want to look at some of the principles we should keep in mind when we go through the process itself. So first of all, we want to make sure that the process is human-centered. In other words, we want to focus on the user's needs. And we are designing essentially for the people, so the people that are using it and not necessarily around technology. Next, you want to make sure that the process itself is collaborative. So we are working with a team and a diverse group of people who can encourage different types of creativity, as well as get a different range of ideas to ideate as well as to experiment with. Next, we have iterative, which means that we're always refining and trying to improve our solution at different stages of the design process. And then lastly is experimental, which is, prototyping and testing the solution. This is usually getting feedback from our users and then redefining our solution. So it could be an application or a website. Now that we've kind of looked at, the different things, components of design thinking, it's kind of crucial to understand that design-based thinking is not something that happens organically, and a lot of times it's something we take for granted, even with things that seem simple to the user. We have now a video that can show what happens when the audience is not considered in the design process and empathy is not used as a guiding principle for design.
This is a square. Can you guess which spot that goes in? That's right, it goes in the square hole. And how about this rectangle? That one, that goes in there too. Up next, we've got this thin rectangle. Can you guess where that goes? That's right, it goes in the square hole. And up next, a cylinder. I think that goes in the square hole. Now, we've also got this semicircle right here. Do you see a slot that would fit the semicircle? That's right, it's the square hole. Okay, up next, the triangle. We know what hole that goes into, right? That's right, the square hole. And up next, we have the arch. And you guessed it, it goes in the square hole. This is a square. Can you guess which spot that goes in?
Let me get out of this.
That's
so we
right.
can stop
It
listening
goes in
to
the square
hole.
Great, thank you, Ariel. So as you can see from the previous video, there's a lot of missed opportunities when we don't use design thinking, and potentially you're introducing more problems for the user. Some other kind of benefits of design thinking includes we're encouraging creativity and innovation. We increase empathy for our users, which kind of help them become more kind of reliant or become more loyal to the product that we are trying to introduce. We are leading to better solutions that meet the user's needs. And lastly, we reduce the risk of failure by testing and refining the solution. Now I will pass it off to Kristy again, and she'll discuss a little bit about different design thinking careers.
Yeah, so like we've mentioned, like design thinking really can be used anywhere. And even when in terms of like choosing a career and like trying to think of what kind of working environment you might want to be in the future, design thinking is super helpful for a lot of opportunities. And so especially in tech, like these are some that we have like kind of pointed out for every letter of like STEAM. So if you're going from like nurse to even like product manager, software and civil engineers, graphic design, marketing, data analysts, like a lot of these require this creative problem solving. And it also, I think, makes, at least for me, like I've worked in marketing and like did some stuff in like UX design. And my favorite part about this design thinking aspect is, especially when you get to interact with users, it turns the entire work into a very humanistic approach of doing whatever job you do at work. So that's why I really like bringing this type of thinking into these kind of jobs. For example, like marketing, like, are you marketing for the brand, or are you marketing to get more of the audiences, right? You want to think more about the users. And so this is why design thinking is so important for all these kind of careers. And now I think Ariel will talk a little bit more about design thinking in practice.
Yeah, so right now we are going to jump in more of a design activity. And what you will need is a piece of paper or something to draw on. That could be like a tablet, pen or pencil for drawing, for your utensils to draw with, highlighters, pencil crayons, and then access to Canva optional if you want to do this on a computer. And you can also use Figma as well if you are more well-versed in design tools. And this activity, if you are planning to start a hackathon project, we also highly recommend you just use this activity for your hackathon project right now if you already have some ideas. Essentially what the activity is in your small group, either draw a wireframe for a social media app for students if you don't really have any ideas for what you want to draw, or create a draft of your hackathon project. And your wireframes should incorporate principles of good design. So before apps are developed, design teams would mock up how users will interact with the app in visual drafts, which are what we call wireframes. Here's some examples of what they could look like. So they could be very colorful on paper, really rough drafts scribbled around, or actually on like a digital mock-up tool, like something simple like Canva, or something more complicated like Figma or Adobe XD. Here is your task, and you must include a minimum of one wireframe. So these are 4 examples of what you could do in the assigned task that we're about to give you. You could do a rough sketch of the homepage of your ideal social media app, or a rough sketch of the user's profile page, a rough sketch of a chat room page, or your own project idea if you don't want to do the social media app, and that's totally okay. If you want to do a website as well, that's totally fine. You have creative freedom. The point of this activity is so that you get used to wireframing. So yeah, you can design a brand new sketch of your ideal student social media app, or simplify, redraw something that already exists. So for example, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can sketch using pen or paper, or design using shapes and texts on a digital tool, like I shown you in the previous slide. You do not have to be a proclaimed artist to create wireframes. And I think this is one of the biggest black holes that people fall into when they think about what is a designer? Who is a designer? Can I be a designer? You do not need to be an artist. At the end of the activity, please present your sketches or your virtual mockups to your peers and comment on about 3 aspects of good design for your app. And we will give you around 5 minutes to quickly draw something. It can be really rough, and we will have another 5 minutes that we'll ask 2 to 3 people to share what they made and what about it uses good design thinking processes. And maybe we can also help you, if it is your hackathon project idea, to make it even better in terms of design thinking. And so using Instagram as an example, these are what Instagram actually looks like when we take screenshots of their homepage, profile page, chat room page, and then hand-drawn wireframes. I drew these on my iPad. So yeah, like the lines aren't even straight, but the point is not to have straight, beautiful lines. The point is so that you have these icons, these shapes on a page, and that people get what you're looking at and how it works. And then of course, digitally created wireframes. So you don't need to draw the exact like pictures on what it is. They could just be a bunch of gray, black, purple, your favorite color boxes and shapes. And of course, like when you use digital tools, they have icons, components that are built in, so you are free to just drag and drop them in. And I think another great thing about if you were to use Canva or something like Adobe XD, you might be able to pass that off directly to your software devs, and they can help you hard code it into your actual project so that in the end, when they do click, your prototype will actually work and function. So yeah, I am going to go back to the instruction page while everyone can take about 5 minutes to plan and prototype. And yeah, type your questions in the chat if you have any questions. And good luck, have fun. We are going to move on so that you can continue planning and work on the drafts of your wireframes. But yeah, good luck with your projects, and I'm gonna go pass it back to Coco.
Great. So now we're going to discuss a little bit about design thinking. So kind of throughout our presentation, we discussed about how design thinking is a problem-solving tool that we can apply to almost any types of fields. By understanding users' needs, ideating, prototyping, and testing, we can create more accessible and more practical solutions. It's always really important to remember to focus on the user, collaborating with others, and then iterating as well. So now for the remaining of the session, we will be kind of inviting back Ariel and Kristy, and we'll do a little quick Q&A on the design-based thinking process. So for the first question, if I don't have experience in UI or UX and I would like to work in this field, what are some ways that I could get my foot in the door?
So we're doing Q&A, right? I guess I could start. So just a little background. I got into UX UI design after graduating from university. So I graduated with a bachelor's of arts, and then I decided to pursue UX UI design afterwards. And what I did was I did a 12-week intensive like boot camp that was offered virtually, but it was like they also had a campus in Vancouver. So it was nice because there was like the in-person staff that you could meet, but it was also virtual. I know there's a bunch of like online certificates if you want to explore UX UI design or just learn a little bit more about it. But I think some of them cost money, so it's really hard to just choose if you want to do it or not. So if you just want to explore more of it, I honestly watched a lot of like day in the life of a UX UI designer and just to see and just to learn more about the field, and then also coffee chatted with a lot of people who are UX designers or product managers, product designers, and ask them what their day-to-day life is. I think for me, when you want to get your foot in the door in something, the best way is just to learn more about it and meet more people who already have their foot in the door or the whole body in the door and just connect with them. Especially, yeah, like after university, like connection is so important. Your network is the most important thing, especially if you do want to do a career transition. So that would be like my few like things if you want to get your foot in the door for like UX UI.
Yeah,
Great. Yeah, Ariel, do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, I think to add on to what Kristy has said, I absolutely agree with everything. And in my case, I study visual arts and computer science in my undergrad, and my undergrad didn't offer any design courses per se. So it was very frustrating because I wanted to do some sort of design related role because of my computer science and art backgrounds. So one of the ways I chose to get more experience in UX design is actually joining hackathons. So I joined a lot of hackathons in my undergraduate years, and what I did was I always took on the role of designer when I was in these groups for hackathon. And what I found was that through these projects, I really worked out how to actually use design thinking in real life. And also I was able to build a portfolio of work from these hackathons, and they are only 24 hours or 48 hours long. So it's very fast and quick, like low commitment per se, but at the end of the day, you come up with some pretty solid and amazing project ideas. And what's really great about it is that sometimes your project might even work, like it's fully functional. It's not just a like wireframe prototype, because you might have a team that has programmers that can help you make your project come to life. And when you have those items in your portfolio, it really speaks to employers. It really helps with your resume. And that's how I got a lot of my free UI UX experience. And one of the most useful things I went to during my undergrad was actually like a hackathon workshop about Adobe XD and design. So Adobe was one of the sponsors for that hackathon. And so I remember I really enjoyed like learning about the tools that people can use when it comes to design. And so that was what opened my eye to what exactly is design and how does it work and how can I get my foot in the door. So yeah, that's kind of everything to do with what Kristy said. And on top, like there's a lot of resources out there in the world that is free that you can use on YouTube, now on TikTok. They're really quick and gets you like an idea of everything. But yeah.
Great. I think definitely both Kristy and Ariel mentioned a lot of really great points. I actually have a lot of friends who are also kind of, whether they have done a design-based undergrad experience, or if they have, maybe done business and have decided over time to kind of hop on the other side of tech and UX design specifically. A lot of them have also mentioned to me that they have either built their portfolios through doing things like internships, or kind of just taking on opportunities of gaining those experiences in designing for UX related projects. And then also just getting, whether it's a certificate or doing an entire maybe master's degree in UX design. These are all kind of ways of getting both the practical experience as well as getting kind of the knowledge foundation in starting a career in UI UX. The next question we have is, describe a UI UX related challenge you have faced. What was it and how did you overcome it?
I have a really common one that people don't often think about. It's about doorknobs. So, so you may have noticed that some doorknobs are like this handle that comes out and you can press on it. Some doorknobs, these are more old, and I'll get into it in a sec why they're considered more of an older style. It's like a round ball that you twist. So the twisty ball doorknob is a bit of a UX challenge, because for people with arthritis or people with a lot of pain in their hands, the twisting motion is really difficult to do, as opposed to the pushing, pulling motion with the flat handle looking doorknobs. So that's why nowadays we see these ball doorknobs a lot less, because it is kind of a UX concern for users who are disabled, essentially. So that is one example I can think of looking at my doorknob right now. And sometimes I also come into these doorknob issues because let's say I'm holding a bunch of groceries and stuff. If the doorknob isn't one of those pushing like up and down ones, it's just hard to get through all this stuff through the door because I have no hands. I use my elbows. I don't know if people can see, like use my elbows to push down the doorknob in order to open the doors. Whereas the round one, it just, you get me, it does not work. Kristy, do you have an example?
No, I was trying to think of one, but your example is so amazing. I love it. It's like, it's also that whole, like in UX design, we also often talk about like push-pull doors as well. And those can be really confusing, even though they're designed so simply, I guess. Like I am notorious for like pushing a pull door, and I always pull a push door. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it could be simple, but at the same time, it really depends on like how the door is like fixed, like what kind of labels you're using, if they physically say push or pull. I know there's also things like if you go, maybe it's like if you go to a different country, like they might have a different different norm of like you walk on this side of the door versus we walk on the other side. But I really love your example, so I don't have anything that would beat that.
Going off of the door example, I was just thinking about my car. So one of the features that I found really nice when I got my vehicle a few years ago was, I don't know if kind of like what Ariel mentioned with, you might be carrying a lot of groceries or carrying a lot of items, and then you want to open your trunk. And I know that a lot of times it's a struggle because you have to put your things down and then you open your trunk and then you put everything back in your behind the car. So one of the features that the agent kind of introduced to me when I got my vehicle was, there's a feature where you can kind of tap your foot at the bottom rim of the car, and then the door is supposed to open automatically. So the idea is that you won't have to open using your hands. And I think when I first got the vehicle, I tested it out a couple times. It was really useful, but I don't know why it kind of stopped working now. So I feel like this is one of those challenges where the idea itself is great, but I think there's definitely ways that maybe the company needs to make sure that it's consistent, so that the idea is that it is fixing a pain point, but how can we make sure for the user that the product will remain consistent and is actually reliable in the long term? So the last question, yeah.
No, I was gonna say, just see Coco on her free time kicking a bunch of cars.
I know.
Make
Testing it out for
hoping that
herself.
one of the doors are open. And for the last question we have is, can you walk us through how you approach a UI UX process? And I think a lot of the things that we discussed in our presentation, we kind of walked through the general process, but when I thought of this question, I wanted to see if, maybe there are tips or tricks that you might do in your previous experience that you might want to share with our attendees today.
I think for me, apart from all the steps that we've already gone through, one thing I really like to do is I like to bring in my marketing brain into UX UI design projects. So sometimes even before we start, researching about the user's experiences and getting to know that part of things, we like to do a market research of what other things or services or apps are out there that are similar to this, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And that's something that I really like to do as part of the UX UI process as well, because in UX design, it's great to have your own original idea of a whole new product or a whole new idea, but at the same time, I think it's really important to know what's working out there and keeping it, like you said, consistent to what's out there. If I'm designing a website, I'm not going to put the delete button, the cancel, the close tab button on the bottom center of the website, right? Maybe I have a really good reason for it, but because every other website is has the same consistent few things, I just want to make sure those consistencies are still in a new project that I do. So I really like doing market research as well.
For me, it would be a heavy focus in the ideation process and involving my peers or my friends into the ideation process if I can. So for example, when I'm trying to come up with an idea to fix an issue or make the problem a little bit better or easier for people to deal with, whether it be a technical tool or the doorknob issue, I would come up with as many ideas as I possibly can. They could be as funny as, strange as, random as, weird as ideas. But the reason why I would come up with so many ideas is so that I can bring in my friends from diverse backgrounds and shut them down, or be the devil's advocate and tell me what are the problems that they can think of with my ideas. And when they start to critique my wonderful, weird, awesome ideas, or terrible, stupid, some ideas are really bad, they give me new ideas on how I can build off of my previous ideas so that they are better, more inclusive, more collaborative. And this way, when you include people from all walks of life to review your ideas before you even execute them, you kind of shut down the ones that won't work at a very early on process. And so when you're working with very few ideas that's been primed by a lot of different people, it really helps you figure out the direction that you're going in. What are the general public's opinions on the project you're working on? Because what you think is a good idea might not actually work in the real world, and what your friends think, you might have some better idea to support like your peers' suggestions to the idea that you already had, because you probably already done some research or thoughts into it. And in the end, you'll get a much, much better product when you have your own creative knowledge, as well as all your friends, your peers, your teammates' suggestions and recommendations that make it a really strong, powerful idea project in the very end. Yeah, that works really well for hackathon projects especially. And I think with how we built Girls in STEAM, that was also kind of our strategy, which is to include people who are like specialists in their fields, who are good at doing what they're doing, to come critique and provide feedback into the ideas and events and programs that we are executing.
Great, thank you, Ariel and Kristy. Those are definitely really great examples of, how you approach UI UX. I think building on kind of some of the ideas that we were being discussed, I think from one of the design classes I took at Wharton was kind of learning about maybe in the second phase when we are trying to identify the issue or the pain point for the user. I think one strategy I learned was kind of doing a journey map. So looking at, from the user perspective, what's their steps, when they first find your site, or when they first open your application, what's kind of their logical thinking, like what's the step-by-step process that they do. And then once you kind of map out that entire process, you can look at, what's the problem, or what's the pain point that we want to address, in whether it's improving the system, or I guess for the hackathon, it will be, what are ways that we can create something new that can improve an existing issue. So is there now we will open the floor for any questions from the audience.
Oh, how to access the recording. After this workshop, in the next couple of days, we will upload it to our own YouTube channel. And the best way is to keep an eye out on our Instagram, and we will link it on our Instagram homepage. Or you can find us on YouTube and subscribe to us. And you can also watch our past workshops as well, and our panels. So you can get access from all of our programming in the past and future if you go to our YouTube, which is at girlsinsteam.org. Any other questions? Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kristy, for linking our YouTube. All right, we're gonna move on. If there's any other questions, feel free to also email us. And
okay, great, thank you. So first of all, thank you, HackPrinceton, again, for partnering with us. It's a great honor that we're able to share a little bit about what we do at Girls in STEAM, as well as hopefully helping fellow attendees with their hackathon projects. So in the sky, you'll see that we have a QR code. It will be leading to a feedback form. And, we encourage everyone, if possible, to scan as well as to fill out the feedback form. You'll be entered into a draw for a $10 Starbucks gift card. We really value getting valuable feedback from our attendees, so that for future workshops as well as future events, we definitely want to improve and kind of create content that's useful for everyone who's interested in STEAM education. Like Ariel mentioned, please feel free to keep an eye out for June, when we do start hiring campus ambassadors for high schools and colleges for the next academic year. And please feel free to also follow us on the different campus Instagram pages as well. And again, please feel free to follow us on the different handles. We are always providing fun updates on Instagram and our other social media platforms. So once again, thank you everyone for joining our session today.